This is the Wikipedia page for History of the World, Part 1. Part 1. You're listening to the podcast where we read Wikipedia articles and provide commentary. Welcome to WikiListen. I'm Rachel Teichman, LMSW.
And I'm Victor Varnado, KSN.
Are you ready to read about this movie that you've sent me numerous clips of, but I've never actually watched the whole movie?
I love this movie so much. It's so funny. Everyone should see it.
All right, here we go. History of the World Part 1. History of the World Part 1 is a 1981 American comedy film written, produced, and directed by Mel Brooks. Brooks also stars in the film playing 5 roles: Moses, Comicus, the stand-up philosopher, Tomás de Torquemada, King Louis XVI, and Jacques, le garçon de pisse. What the hell am I reading right now?
And Jacques, le garçon de pisse.
The large ensemble cast also features Sid Caesar, Shecky Greene, Gregory Hines in his film debut, Charlie Callis, and Brooks regulars Ron Carey, Dom DeLuise, Madeline Kahn, Harvey Korman, Cloris Leachman, Andreas Voutsinas, and Spike Milligan.
The film also has cameo appearances by Royce D. Applegate, Beatrice Arthur, Nigel Hawthorne, Hugh Hefner, John Hurt, Phil Leeds, Barry Levinson, Jackie Mason, Paul Mazursky, Andrew Sachs, and Henny Youngman. Among others, Orson Welles narrates each story.
I have never felt so much like a millennial. I don't know who any of these people are, really. Except for Hugh Hefner. Nice. Despite carrying the title Part 1, there were originally no plans for a sequel. The title is a play on The History of the World Volume 1 by Sir Walter Raleigh as detailed below. However, 40 years after the film was originally released, Hulu announced that it ordered a sequel variety series titled History of the World Part 2, with production planned to begin in spring 2022.
Ooh, yes. Plot. The film is a parody of the historical spectacular film genre anthology, including the sword and sandal epic and the period costume drama subgenres. The 4 main segments consist of stories set during the Stone Age, the Roman Empire, the Spanish Inquisition, and the French Revolution. Other intermediate skits include reenactments of the giving of the 10 Commandments and the Last Supper.
The Stone Age. Cavemen, including Sid Caesar, depict the invention of fire, the first artist, which in turn gives rise to the first critic, the first marriages, Homo sapien and then homosexual, primitive weapons, particularly spears, and the first funerals. Also depicted are early attempts at comedy and music by smashing each other's feet with rocks and thus creating an orchestra of screams, until performing Handel's Hallelujah chorus at the end. This is very chaotic.
It is. The Old Testament. Moses, Mel Brooks, comes down from Mount Sinai carrying 3 stone tablets, having received the law from God, the voice of an uncredited Carl Reiner. When announcing the giving of the reception of the law to the people, Moses proclaims, "The Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 15, whereupon he drops one of the tablets, which promptly shatters. Oi, 10 commandments for all to obey."
The Roman Empire. Brooks plays Comicus, a stand-up philosopher whose job combines elements of philosophy and stand-up comedy. Comicus is notified by his agent, Swiftus, Ron Carey, that he has landed a gig at Caesar's palace. En route to the palace, Comicus meets and falls in love with a Vestal virgin named Miriam, Mary Margaret Humes, and befriends an Ethiopian slave named Josephus, Gregory Hines. Josephus's life is spared when he is conscripted into the service of the Empress Nympho, Madeline Kahn.
Empress Nympho. That's really funny. At the palace, Emperor Nero, Dom DeLuise, gorges on food, ogles pretty maidens, and waits to be entertained. Comicus forgets his audience and begins to crack insulting one-liners about the emperor's abundant body contours and corrupt ways. Josephus absent-mindedly pours a jug of wine into Nero's lap and is ordered to fight Comicus to the death in a gladiatorial manner. They fight their way out of the palace, assisted in their escape by Miriam, Empress Nympho, and a horse named Miracle.
Is this the scene where they tell him to take one more bite and he insists that he can't do it, but then he finally does and then he explodes?
That is from Monty Python.
Yes.
That is not from Mel Brooks. You Philistine.
After Miriam helps Comicus, Josephus and Swiftus briefly find refuge in Empress Nympho's palace. Josephus is outed among a row of eunuchs after reacting to a seductive dancer's performance, and the group is chased by Roman soldiers led by Marcus Vindicus, Shecky Green, as the soldiers gain on the group's cart pulled by Miracle. Josephus instructs them to pull over in a field and requests much papyrus. He takes Roman red marijuana, which is growing alongside the road, and rolls it into the papyrus, forming a device he calls Mighty Joint, sets fire to it, and mounts it to the back of their chariot, trailing smoke into the chasing army.
The resulting smoke confuses and incapacitates the trailing Roman army. The escaping group then sets sail from the port to Judea. While waiting tables at a restaurant, Comicus blunders into a private room where the Last Supper is taking place, as Jesus is telling the apostles, "One of you has betrayed me tonight." The apostles are in fear. Comicus says, "Judas!" Judas, startled, almost jumps out of his seat as Comicus replies, "Do you want some mulled wine?" and interrupts Jesus, John Hurt, repeatedly, using his name as an expression for dismay or concern right in front of him. Eventually, Leonardo da Vinci, Art Matrano, arrives to paint the group's portrait. Dissatisfied that he can only see the backs of half of their heads, he has them move to one side of the table and paints them with Comicus behind Jesus, holding a silver plate, which doubles as a halo.
The Spanish Inquisition segment parodies a grandiose Busby Berkeley-style production consisting of an extended song and dance number featuring Brooks as the infamous Torquemada. The sequence opens with a herald introducing Torquemada and making a play on his name, despite pleas for mercy from the condemned. "You can't Torquemada anything. Talk him outta anything." Instances of comical torture include a spinning Iron Maiden and water torture reimagined with nuns performing an Esther Williams-style aquatic ballet. Jackie Mason and Ronnie Graham supply cameos as Jewish torture victims. This is chaotic.
That was the first half. Then we got to go do the second half later. This is a great movie. The page doesn't read as funny as the movie is, though, but it's still funny.
I mean, it's creative. I'm seeing the humor in it, but to be honest, I'm cringing a bit.
Great.
This has been the Wikipedia page for History of the World, Part 1, Part 1.
If you'd like us to read a particular Wikipedia page, please let us know. Thanks for listening to WikiListen. To support the show, go to patreon.com/WikiListenPodcast and find us on social media at WikiListen and at wikilisten.com.